Good evening to our audiences who joins us for this live yet again this week. I'm Fabienne Lanz and I'll be your host tonight. Sandman Sport, we're chatting at the pit stop today. We're joined by a legend in her own right, Miss Fabienne Lanz, an endurance racer, a sprint racer, completely not just breaking barriers, but completely crashing through them in the world of motorsports. Before we get into the chat, if this is your first time joining us, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave some comments below so we can have a chat, and you can have a chat with Fabienne herself as well. Follow us on all social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or X as we know it now, at Sandman Sports. Miss Fabienne, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
I mean, we were chatting a bit just before the live, and I've done some reading on just what you've done through the years, and it's completely mind blowing. And I think what has been mind blowing the most to me is your transition from one category to the next, and then switching from different cars. But before we get to that part, I'd like to go back first, to where it all started. I know there's an article that read you swapped your ballet shoes for a helmet and four wheels. Just talk us through how that happened and what went through little Fabienne's mind to make that decision.
So I suppose, as with many girls, when you're like 5 years old, you want to try some ballet, even though it's like more like play ballet. But I enjoyed it very much. The pink tutu, all of that, and even if we go to today, often in my training, it still comes out where I point the toes. And the people, it's a dead giveaway. It's like, you did ballet when you were small. Yes, I did, and I enjoyed it very much. So it actually, so growing up in a motorsport environment, because my dad used to race, and at the time he was a South African champion and things like that. So I was already in that environment, and I used to sit in his car on race events and, play around. And so I was exposed to it. Let's put it that way. And then so I've got an older sister and an older brother, and he would just let us be what we want to do. And then there was an indoor go-kart track that opened up not far from his workshop. And all the parents went to go and have this party. And then, of course, there are children. And all of us got to give it a spin. And I enjoyed it, but I was so slow that everybody was passing me. I think you could walk faster. And I actually got out the cart and I said to my dad, this is something I really would like to try to do. And I'm sure he must have thought at the time, maybe this is, are you sure? But he lets us give it a try. So I kept going back. And 6 months later, he bought me my first go-kart. And here we are today.
Wrong button. I pressed the wrong button. It's quite a common start that you start off in a go-kart, and as the years go by, you just get better and better. You learn how to handle the car, or the cart rather, and then transition into bigger and bigger and bigger vehicles. You started racing at that age. Just maybe talk about the mental endurance you sort of learned at that age.
So very early on, from the onset, obviously there's not many girls that race. So you already stick out like a nice white flag that's waving in the wind there. So my dad, again, he didn't treat me as a girl competing against the boys. He says we are here to get better, go from mid pack to front pack to things like that. So he says you just need to bring in your A game every time we come here, because this is serious. It's a serious sport. You need to, even though you're still learning and you're young, you just need to bring your A game. So obviously from that, I then thought, okay, now how do I give this A game? girls generally are physically not as strong as guys. So as we got older, the weight started playing a factor, in a sense of girls are generally lighter as well. So we have to add a lot of lead onto the cart to make the minimum weight. So now it starts becoming physically more demanding to get that right. So from day one, my dad says you got to listen to your engine. You need to be meticulous in everything you do. And I think from my curious mind that I am as a person, I then just dove into all the technicalities of everything that had to be involved with handling tires, tire pressures, where to fit the lead, where everything on that cart. And over the years, I became really good at diagnosing, what works, what condition is good, how many people are on the track, how much grip is there. The variables change from session to session. And I got really good at reading that intel. And then obviously moving over to racing overseas, I learned a lot from those teams there. And then I applied that every time I came back. And obviously then you go up the field as well. And then you start winning championships. And then you start getting recognized like that. And then, of course, as we spoke earlier on, I love challenges. So it has to be lank hard for me, so that I apply full focus, but I perform better like that. So they call that BMT. So it's that big match temperament. A lot of people know that on practice days, when I'm thereabout, they know, yes, next day I'm faster, because I always arrive on race day. And then I give that extra little edge that's there. And I do that naturally. I had people tell me that I do that. I didn't even know that I naturally just conform into that. And then, so now moving from karts into cars, it's a whole nother set of challenges, which I'm enjoying very much, because there's shocks involved. There's dampers, all of that kind of stuff that's involved that a go-kart doesn't have.
It's a softer ride now. It's higher. It's further from the ground.
Yes, and it's a lot hotter. So I'm having to train with like all the clothes that you can find in the world. So when I go to my personal trainer, I'm like, the only thing that's missing is a balaclava. I think I'm going to wear that next. Is just to then train in that environment, so that when I'm in the car, because that's the biggest thing I had to get used to, is getting from the karting that's outside, and then you get into a car, which a Cobra is like half. So half you're in the car and half you're out, and then in the Golf you're fully in that car, and the sweat's just running down like this, and you just got to deal.
At least it's not a Golf 1 where the aircon or the fan is not working and the windows can't open. At least those are good.
Yeah, we actually did that the one race. I was like, just take the window out and just leave it out. Yeah.
Take the whole door off if you have to. But I mean, you've karting and learning all those technical things, and learning how to diagnose your car, learning what's right for you as a driver, has sort of paved the way for you in ways that has now made you a great driver, not just a better driver. I think the world has seen you just grow from moving one category to the next. I mean, you've transitioned from GT4, which is it's a slower race, to now GT3, where it's a little bit more competitive, and you've just completely broke through there. Just talk about that transition from the GT4 category to the GT3.
So by GT3 and GT4, you're talking about the Cobra?
Yes.
Yeah. So I suppose a Cobra is more a GT4 kind of car. So the GT3 would be the next step that we're tapping into. So we're not there yet. But yes, definitely. I think I'm not too sure where I could pinpoint the biggest differences are. I suppose it should get easier the higher up you go, because at the moment, like the Cobra is a normal H pattern gearbox, and you have to heel and toe, and it's very old school. So that's where it actually gets really tricky, as to, you got to time your braking. And like at the race at Kailami we did 2 weeks ago, a few times I caught myself out where I was braking really late, and it was a little bit too late. And there's no ABS in that car, so naturally it just locks the inside wheel whichever
Yeah.
way you're sitting. So I had a bit of that on a few right-handers that I did. And of course, then it's tell yourself, okay, take a step back. So going into GT3, are you going into paddle shifts? There's going to be ABS. And then you can use both feet again. So in karting, your left is the braking and the right is the accelerator. And then in these cars where you need to use your left for the clutch, you now have to use your right foot for the braking and the accelerating. So it's a lot of that kind of adapting, if I can put it that way. But yes, I foresee that it should get easier, which then just means the competitiveness should get closer, because obviously the easier the car is to drive, the more people can drive it. So then it gets more competitive. And then that's when you need to start pulling out in the experience what then makes the difference, or where on the track are you faster, because you can be quick at a place where you can't overtake, and then you're slow where somebody else is quicker, and then they all overtake you. So that's something to look into as well.
Earlier we spoke of the two cars that you race in. So obviously, the Cobra, which is quite old school. One of the things you're saying, it sounds like you're speaking about my old car, which is that Golf One that gave me hell. It's raw. There's no technology. Exactly what you said. There's no ABS braking. It's the old school braking. The gears are different. But also the engine and power is quite different too. For instance, the Golf that you're driving, the Golf 5, which is a GTI, which is cars that we used to drive in here on the streets. But I mean, what is the difference between driving that car, and why are you using that car when you are driving it?
So the Golf 5 is, I got that before. So the Cobra I race with the Backdraft Racing team. So that's a team supplied car. And then the Golf I got because I just wanted to actually just get myself seat time. And then obviously to create that opportunity when the opportunity arrives, that I can just get in a car and then I can drive and show what I can do, because the first impression is always important. So the Golf 5 has got a lot more power than the Cobra. It's obviously front wheel drive versus the Cobra's rear wheel drive. So
Yeah.
the Cobra is relatable to the go-kart because they're both rear wheel drive. And then the Golf, the gear change is easier, and it's got ABS as well. So it's just a different style of driving, and they're a bit old school, both of them, in that respect. And then, of course, the Golf is a bit more top heavy, where the Cobra sits a bit lower. But what's nice about those two cars, driving them like that, is as a driver, one can learn a lot faster what the other one is doing, because now you can start comparing the two to each other. But it has to be done in a controlled manner, because not everybody can do that, because now the style is different. So again, can you adapt to the different things? But like as we said earlier on, listen to your engine was the rule I got from day one. So I became a very meticulous on how to learn things very quickly. It's the same as going back to the kart racing, is racing overseas. As South Africans, we have to go against the euro. So we're not as privileged to go before the race to go and test and then go again for the race. So I had to go, when I go and race overseas at a world final, I'm there and I got to learn that track as quick as possible. And then I got to execute and try and be in the top 5 and the top 10 that as best as I can. And again, the curiosity and that mindset comes in. And I learned quickly how to analyze corners and how they function. So I'm proud to say that every racetrack I go to, within one day, I've already figured out how it works, and I am within a couple of tenths to the front guys, which allows me on the second day to fine tune. And then, of course, you end up being in that top 5. Yeah.
That's crazy. And that's crazy that it's that it's so simple for you to do. from looking from the outside in, it just sounds as simple as how you're explaining it. But I mean, just looking at your journey, what is what has been a standout moment for you, where you said, "Oh my gosh, this is it. This is crazy. I love what I do."
Um, That's an interesting one. So there's different phases as are growing up. So as a kid, obviously there's more like role models and things that are in play. And it was interesting. Yesterday, I got to attend an event from Momentum, and the Susie Wolf was there, and she was giving her story about motorsport and stuff like that. So for her, the moment was when she saw Jenson Button driving a Formula 3 car in the UK. And I thought that was so amazing because the same person was the trigger for me when I was about 11. And it was basically him racing the top of the range karting league that you got in the European Championships. So that would have been just before he did the Formula 3. And the picture was hanging at our local federations in the office. And I remember getting my annual license the one year, going with my dad, walking into the office. And then I just saw that photo and I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. This is my life. This is what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a racing driver. So I suppose that's sort of the beginning of it. And then going through the milestones, obviously the first championship you win, you're like, I can really do this. This is really good. So naturally, I think girls generally in motorsport are very hard on themselves, which can be also quite pivotal and a strength, not a weakness, because we again think a lot or give it more concentration, if I can put it that way, because girls generally don't race to show off. They're so focused on trying to get everything right because there's not many around, that when you then do succeed and you get it everything right, that is what success, or to me, that is what my success looks like. And then, of course, in 2007, I got to race at a world final in Italy. And I knew from the onset, out of these 90 people, I better make sure my qualifying is on point. So I didn't have a teammate, so I made a friend with another South African guy, and then I gave him the strategy, and I said, "No, I'll go in front of you first, and then you can we'll swap, and then I'll go behind you," because I knew which laps I will do my quickest laps, and I knew the beginning I wasn't that quick, so that way I could leverage that advantage to the maximum, which I then did, and I qualified fifth. And that's where I sat for most of the weekend, finishing second, third, and then eventually in the final, I ended fifth as well. So obviously standing on the podium, being the first girl now to do this, breaking those barriers, and of course, what was quite complimenting was the fact that they stripped my engine after each heat, because this was like unheard of where are you coming from, how is this even possible? But the respect that I gained after about the third or fourth heat, where they then realized, hang on, I'm just here to do my thing, that was an amazing experience. From the drivers to the technical people to the team crew, the support structure, that was a big turnaround for me, where I saw that I'm now included in this. They're supporting this, and they supporting me as a driver. So that's a big thing for I think many women in a lot of different disciplines, workspaces, everywhere, where they just want to be recognized as a person, that what they're doing, it can be praised, and they're good at that, and they can get the job because they're getting the job done. So that I think was a big pivotal point. And then of course later on in the years, winning again in the Africa Open, representing the country in another racetrack in Italy. That was very good, but of course it comes with bittersweet moments as well, because I had a lot of engine issues on that event, and then of course in the pre-final the kart stopped, so it was like that was the end for me. Even though again I was in the top 10 out of, I think it was about 70 or 80 drivers. as well. So it is a lot of hardship that you learn from all the failures that come and all the variables and things that go wrong. You can have a puncture and then you're out. It's all these small things that you got to look for. And most of the time, you spend your time just trying to prevent things from possibly happening. So that's all you do is you do that. And then, of course, I then started going into coaching children to do go-kart racing. So I did that for 10 years. And a lot of champions have come out of my stable. So I'm really proud of that too, because it also shows that what I'm doing in racing, I'm able to coach the younger generation as well to do well, which is really heartwarming because it's nice to give back to the sport as well. And then, yeah, so more recently, 2020, that is where I won the South African Championship. A very difficult year with COVID. And then obviously where we got racing again, everything was crunched into a very small time frame. And but it was a really good season, that one, where I literally downscaled a lot, and it was just me and my mechanic, and then my dad would come just on race day as well. And we just did that one-on-one thing. We raced a six-speed shifter kart. So that's for the people that know bikes. It's very close to that, where the gears are like sequential. They're just forwards and backwards. And again, I learned all the tuning and carburation and all that stuff overseas. So I found a system that works. I applied it, and it was good enough for me to then obviously beat the guys and win the championship. So that was a big rewarding season, if I can put it that way. And I guess also physically, because in the last race, I had an accident with the guy that was actually leading the championship. And so the two of us went head on head. And of course, we knew whoever's in front is going to be winning. And we had a crash, and it ended up breaking my rib, which I didn't know at the time. But I had the medical checks done, everything, and they cleared me. But I knew something was not right. But of course, cowboys don't cry. So I sucked it up, and I held it together, and I won the championship that day. And obviously, the next day went to hospital, and then they said, "Yeah, your rib is in two pieces. So please, can you do nothing?" Because I punctured the lung as well. So I was like quite fortunate that it didn't go worse. But that's damage control. So you need wisdom in that too. A lot of damage control, and know what's in your power, what is not in your power. And then you sort of navigate around that. And then of course, yeah, now I'm racing cars, and being a driver with the Backdraft racing team, it's an amazing opportunity. We're doing a lot of things, especially women in sport, women in business, and also youth. There's a big focus on that as well.
You've spoken a lot about challenges, and just the way you speak of them is, it's just almost, I don't want to say as though it's nothing, but you've got that mindset, and it's a mindset it's a MacGyver mindset. Let's make a plan. To be honest, it's a real MacGyver mindset where, okay, there's something wrong, let's get through it, and then we'll figure out, what the problem was, and we'll, once we've diagnosed, we move on. And that sort of seems like how you move through challenges within the space, outside of the car and outside of the races as well. It must be difficult to be scrutinized, or frustrating rather, to be scrutinized as a racer because you're a female rather than because you are good. Um, how how is it that you push through and you persevere, and you let go of those frustrations?
I suppose the biggest thing is actually living in the moment, and always looking forward. So generally, when that's what I coach the kids also. When they're racing on a racetrack, you always need to be looking at least about 10, 20 meters before. So when somebody's crashing in front of you, you can decide, are you going to go left, right, where you're going to go to now avoid the accident. And I suppose that applies to everything that you do. And then translating to the business side of things as well. We can't dwell on what just didn't go right. Even though afterwards, when an event or something is done, I will be very hard on myself and look at all the things that went wrong. But with the years of racing, I have come to also coach myself to look at the whole picture and not be so critical and say, okay, now everything is bad because one thing was bad. It's about the whole picture. Did it work? Did you win? Whatever it is, did it, did you succeed? And it's yes. And then what can we do better next time? Because most of these things when you're racing is the car and conditions are normally somewhere, if you can get it between 90 to 95%, the chances that you're going to win is very high. The chances that you have everything 100% perfect are so slim because again, with the weather changing and all the conditions changing, and of course you're racing against how many people on the track, and everybody's making a different move, especially when you're racing so close to each other, so that you always got to be very observant of what's going on around you, that there's no time to think about the just last corner that you made a mistake or you didn't defend and somebody passed you or overtook you. You now need to focus on how do you overtake this person back. And like the hardest is when you're between two people. So you're busy trying to focus on how am I going to pass this person while you're actually defending your position because now somebody is behind you to try and overtake you. So that I find is the hardest thing you can ever be in. And I suppose when it comes to business environment, there are times where you have to make a decision almost based on instinct. And motor racing is actually a very good tool to use for that, because once it's happened, once you've crashed, it's over. There's nothing you can change. And when you need to make a business decision, that as well, you've made the decision. You now need to move forward with that. If it's a bad decision, there's consequences. If it's a good decision, obviously you get rewarded and you move forward. So I think a lot of that has to play, living in that moment and just looking at what's the next step in front of you. Like, for example, what's the next corner that you need to take? Obviously, when you're racing, you should know by the time you get into the race which corners you are strong at and which ones you're not so strong at. And then you can navigate and just plan like that. Your mic is on mute.
Do I remember my question now is the question. You've joined backdrop racing. And when you speak of them, you seem quite excited.
Yes.
How have they contributed to your development as a driver? I mean, you're quite well developed. You overdeveloped, as you overqualified. You have 3 doctorates in driving, I believe. But I mean, how more developed can you be? But how do they continue contributing to your development as a driver?
So I really was taken away with their business module. So I had the honor of actually visiting them in Durban, and they have an amazing support structure in the sense of they build everything on the Cobra from the beginning to the end. And taking the factory tour, it was really eye-opening to see how they included the women into their business module. And again, women having to concentrate and be so meticulous, they end up being the welders of the chassis and stuff in the factory, and that's a very important part of the car, because obviously if the chassis is not welded correctly, especially in a go-kart, I've had a few of those where just unfortunately the chassis just was not, something was wrong. Like a manufacturing default, and then your handling is out the window, and you literally just need to hang it on the wall and go get another one. So that's how critical that is. So yes, coming back to their business module, it's just the alignment of vision that I see with them is there. And they obviously believe in me, and they know I do a good job. But also off the track, there's a lot of things that we discuss before and after the races, when it comes to marketing and how to get more engagement of people involved. And obviously, you want to tell the good story, and that's important as well. So the relationship is very good there. And also the crew. I really enjoy how they bring the young crew in, and they train them, they equip them, they empower them to now be able to work with them on the cars. And then obviously some of them are new, so they need to learn the ropes, and they get thrown in the deep end, and they now have to now learn quickly. But that's where the support structure is really good, where the more senior people will just oversee the younger people, and make sure, that there's a catch net, that they can sort of move in that area. But if they do slip a little bit out of place because of inexperience, it's not a train smash. And so it's a really good business module that they got as well.
I mean, you talk so highly of just the women's involvement, and that aspect of whether it's behind the scenes or whether it's on the track. I mean, you're one of very few on the racetrack in such um a high endurance, a high pressure environment. It's difficult to be something that you can't see. You've you've thrown that completely out of the window, and you just fell in love with the sport, and persevered through, and broke that barriers without even realizing you've done that. But in doing that, you've also realized there's a massive gap that needs to be closed. Just talk about sort of what you think still needs to happen to bring women into motorsport, for example. How do you get more women behind steering wheels?
So in general, I think there's a big intimidation factor. Girls generally shy away from going out there and trying something. And then they end up not trying. So you got to be bold, and you got to go. But of course, that's where I like to come in and guide them, and tell them, you can be brave and you can be bold. Just try it. I'll be here again as the catch net, and I can guide you along with that. So obviously, I've done a girls' 3-day camp last year to try and investigate and see sort of where are the girls at. What would they like to do? Are they brave enough to try out? And then more recently, I came across a concept of a lot of women are pushing for equality, and there's actually where we should be pushing for equity. And that is because, for example, ladies are physically not as strong as guys on average. So we naturally have to train harder, but it makes us more determined. So there the perseverance comes in. So that becomes a strong point. And then obviously trying to provide you don't want the equal platform. The lady needs maybe a bit more assistance with training. So you could give her the coach that can give her the better physical training, so that she can then also deliver the way she needs to. Because there were some questions going around also as to, can there be ladies changing a wheel on a Formula One car? And that's quite a good question. But to be brutally honest, the fastest person is going to get the job, whether it's a girl or a guy. So that one also needs to be realistic about that. So generally, like with NASCAR or other forms of racing where the wheels are quite heavy, it is just naturally easier for men to do that because they are stronger and taller, and they can get the job done. So it's got nothing to do with being a woman or being a man. It's just that this person fits the profile and gets the job done the quickest, because it's all about the lap time and the pit stop time, and it's all about gaining or trying to lose the least when you're doing these things, because it's all about winning and crossing the line first. So that's very important. And again, from an upbringing point of view, my dad didn't have me racing. Oh, you're a girl now, you need to do this, or you need to dress like this. Or he's like, this is the occasion, you're going to dress appropriately like that, and then you go. There's a place for everything. So naturally, when you go to like a ladies' award kind of place, you can wear a nice dress. But when you're gonna go to the racetrack, do not arrive there in high heels, because you need to run around and this thing's gonna fall on your feet, and or you're gonna fall over your own feet. So it's how do you arrive as well with that attitude. And I've had ladies say in their workspace they're getting intimidated by the guys. And then I say, okay, but you can empower the guy by you showing up with a correct attitude, and you are there to get the job done. You don't want to belittle him. You want to do your best. And that is how he then respects you, and he actually becomes your teammate. Because I've seen that in racing a lot, where, for example, I win a race, and then, of course, the people chirp the two guys that are now standing left and right, that now a girl just beat them. And then I say, no, hold on, we are all racing drivers, because when the helmet is on, there is no male, female. So that's unfair to belittle them now, because now a woman is now taking over, or whatever they want to now stigma this thing too. I've noticed a shift there, where I've earned a lot of respect from other drivers. And then it shows on the racetrack that we mean flat out business, but we can be friends off the track and have a discussion. Obviously not with everybody, because the world is made of different kind of characters. And you just sort of shy away from those that then you can't make friends with. But I think that's where a lot of education is needed. I've designed a workshop where it talks with ladies of how do you show up where you go, what is your attitude towards it. And in the past, even me, I've been extreme to one side, where I was very defensive, and anything any guy would say in an official point of view, I would already get defensive and want to attack him back with something witty. And over time, I've learned, or I think matured, if you can call it that way, as to that's not the right way either, because now I'm stepping on his toes and I'm belittling who he is and insulting him. And that doesn't work either.
You seem to be doing a lot off the track. Aside from learning what you need to do for race day, and sort of building yourself, you're contributing to a lot of other mindsets and other individuals and their mindsets. What are some of the projects that you're involved in? You've mentioned some, and one that you've designed yourself, a workshop. Talk a little bit more about that, and where do we look out for these things?
So the ladies' workshop is a very interesting one. So it starts with a TED talk. Again, how do you show up at work? And then we've designed a wheel changing stand, where the ladies have to physically change the wheel. And how I came across that is I actually had a flat tire. Having my dad's car at the time was a Jeep Grand Cherokee, of course, a very big wheel. And luckily it went flat in the estate. So the safety was fine. And I like challenges. So I was like, no one's going to help me do this. Now I'm going to change this wheel myself, because the petrol station's too far. It's going to damage the rim. So off I went. I changed the wheel, and it's race morning. I told my dad I'm going to be late because the wheel just went flat. And I changed the wheel within 20 minutes. I called him. I said, I'm on my way. It's already done. And of course, that inspired the idea of, hang on, how many women actually know how to change a wheel? And I made a little bit of a survey, and it's shocking that a lot of ladies don't know how to do it. But I can't blame them either, because they do have maybe the boyfriend, a friend, a guy friend, a husband that they can call. But what about the day comes when you now have to change this yourself, because time is of the essence. And we know with the roads and the not so safety in South Africa, you need to be able to address that as quick as possible. So I felt so liberated by doing that myself, that I said, you know what, I need to implement that in, because I think every person that can change their own wheel will have a different driving attitude on the road as well. So it's a whole mind shift that then starts to happen. And then, of course, we've got a fleet of corporate racing go-karts. So we use racing go-karts that we converted into corporate carts. So I call it a very agile cart. So it's not like your typical mall cart. It handles well. It's got amazing brakes. It's got a lot of grip. So it's a very easy to drive, and the ladies are raving about it, actually, more than the guys. And then, of course, they get to have driving themselves experience. So obviously that we use the same fleet of carts for team building. So companies can come and do the team building if we want. We're based in Pretoria, so naturally Swartkops or Benoni are the two tracks we play in. And then, I did the girls' camp last year. It was a 3-day camp, and we're looking to expand that to try and see if we can reach other African countries to do camps with the youth, so boys and girls, in the different countries. Obviously, we need to do a field study of what tracks are available, should they come here, things like that. But that's very exciting. It's taking its time, but with all good things, they take time. It's not like the racetrack that goes fast. These things actually take time, but that's okay. And then what else are we busy with? I do vision boards at schools. So basically, I use my experience of motorsport, like we're chatting tonight, on the experiences, the challenges, and so on, and I make it relatable to the children that I speak to. So we currently do grade 6 and grade 7. So it's before your high school. And I basically dive into what are their sort of born skills that they got, what's their passion, what do they like, what don't they like, what are their strengths, weaknesses, and eventually it gives us the goal that what is that they want to do as a career. And then, but that can be anything. So that is not, I use my motorsport experience, but I make it relatable to the children so that they can see where do they want to go. So obviously there are some kids that come out of that actually want to get involved into motorsport. So that's how we collect the database as to for future things that we're doing and activities, or there's companies out there that want to do different like engineering things, or there's lots of opportunities that are coming up, and then we can obviously give them these children that showed interest in that particular department, whether it's engineering or marketing or whatever it is. We can then just guide them in that direction so that they can then go and study that and do something within the motorsport field.
You empowering through motorsport. And I think for me, a sentence that has empowered me is righty tighty, lefty loosey. Literally saved my life. But I mean, you're doing such great work on and off the track, whether it's in the classroom, in the garage, or in an office, or a boardroom. You're doing brilliant work, and I think that sort of paves the way for the future in motorsport, especially for women in that sport. How do you think it's going to pan out? What do you think the future looks like? As near as 5 years, do you think it's going to change drastically, where we're going to see more females not just participating in the sport, but maybe sharing a podium with you sooner than you know?
So that's a very good question, because of course that idea birthed itself when in 2022 I raced at a Nations Cup in Spain, and being again, it seems to be I'm always in a top 5 kind of vibe, but I was leading the final, and then to this day, we're actually not too sure what went wrong, but it seems like the engine got hot or something was just going pear-shaped. So from about lap 4, I knew that this win is going to be extremely difficult to try and get, because the race is 20 laps long. So of course I fell down the order, and eventually I think I finished fifth or sixth or somewhere there. And but the point is that I was in the front there. I was winning heats. I was leading. And then I had a look behind me and I said, but now where are the others? I can't be flying this flag alone. While it's great to be dubbed, the fastest woman and breaking barriers, it's the reality is, where are the others? Why are they not here? Why are they competing but often found in that bottom half of the field? How do we get them to move up the ranks? What do they need? Because obviously my growing up is different, because I had a racing, or have a racing dad. And that is a big advantage. And you can see that with boys and girls, where they have racing dads, that it's the mindset is just different. They already a higher level. So second generation racing drivers, boys and girls, are generally they've got that advantage, if I can call it that. So the Tillotson guys were keen for me to come. So last year I went as the women ambassador for the Nations Cup, and especially for the girls, to try and investigate what is this and coach them and whatever it is that they need. And I must have done a good job, because they asked me to come back this year. So the first week of September, I'll be in Spain again. Obviously, there's going to be some girls will be the same, some will be different girls, and actually just find out, what's their background, what's the demographic, what are their challenges. And again, I guess with the vision board is I can do a motorsport one with them, like I did at girls camp, is to actually just find out what are their set of challenges, because every country has their own set of challenges. So they need different tools to get to where they need to get to. And that's what makes it so interesting. And because every individual is different. And you can't just put everybody on one playing field and say, okay, there you go, do that now, go see what you can do. Or everybody gets equal stuff, so it should be the same for everyone. No, it's not. So education is definitely a big thing, is to, again, like we're doing here, is just talking about it and empowering, informing, reading up on things, a lot of that. And of course, I'm flying the flag for the girls and the boys to reach out to me, to ask me the question. Don't be afraid to ask. I'm here to help you. And I think that's what's the beauty of what I'm doing, is the giving back to the sport, because I know I'm good at what I do and I've done it long enough, and I gave it my life to be here. But I can't be standing on that podium and be like, yeah, okay, I get another trophy, now what? It's for me much more rewarding, I guess, because I'm also a people's person, and I love children and developing children. So that's what I want to give back from that point of view. Definitely the next 5 years, it's still going to be difficult to see the girls come through and also be competitive, because at the moment a lot of programs are doing an inclusivity program where they're ticking the box, okay, the girls are now part of this, but what are you doing to empower them to actually get better? They need coaching. Women are emotional creatures. We handle things very different. There can be something that men just, they say, that's, you can disregard that, that's nothing, where we hang on to that when it comes to the emotional side. And it is, how do you sort of chew on that and go through that, and then you can carry on. So it's definitely needs a lot of coaching. And then from the girls camp that I did last year, it was interesting to see how many girls actually want to be part of motorsport. And the general consensus is that men generally like motorsport more than women. And that's okay. But I can say on the flip side that the women that are involved in motorsport really love it. So a woman that, if you see a woman in motorsport, that is a really dedicated person. You can rely on her, you can trust her, and she'll get the job done, and she's good at it. That's why she's there. So that's also a very pro thing, if you want to call it like that. So if there are girls out there that are convinced they are going to put the effort, they're going to go, they're going to persevere when they get knocked down, they keep going, they will be seen and they will be recognized, because there's a big shift happening there, and that they will be rewarded with.
I just wanna step back a little bit. You've mentioned obviously some initiatives or in some countries, um, they're trying to, inverted commas, tick a box by having the inclusivity program within their structures. These are young women or young girls that seem to enjoy the sport and want to get more involved. The passion and the heart is there. Like you said, women are emotional creatures. There's that aspect to it. Um, just looking at your background, and this is something you've mentioned right through. It sort of gave you the upper hand with your dad kind of having experienced with cars, whether it being as a driver or fixing them and being able to diagnose them. Obviously, you've gained that. That has sort of been your tool of empowerment. Do you think that specifically, aside from all the mental and the emotional things, that technical aspect, do you think that's a major key in what young women are lacking? And then how do we then shift that? You can, if a car drives past you or you sit in the car, you can feel and you can read the car. The car's literally speaking to you. How do you then, or when do you start teaching these girls the skill?
So it's very from the onset, from day one. It's like I was coached to be aware of what's going on, and to be meticulous. So that will come from day one, where it's look out for this, look out for that. So obviously I start very basic. I start with the tires first. That seems to be the easiest way to understand, because you can change the tire pressures and they can physically see a difference. And then before they go into driving the cart or the car, it will be okay, you should be seeing this happen, so look out for that. And then so you prepare them. And I think that's with the girls that come from, or kids that come from non-racing backgrounds. If the parents can be that support structure to just guide them, because they will have some type of car knowledge, that they can then just go, okay, you should be seeing something like this, or if you're pulling on the steering wheel like this, it should kick out the back. And then there's a lot of modern cars have all the traction control and all of that. So it's all that basic talk that will initiate the mind, and the curious person that's really into it will then start building the blocks onto that. So you can use the very simple things like the traction control, the tires. Take your kids to when you go change your tires and see how they balance the wheels. And why are you balancing wheels? It's because it shakes, and it distorts the whole handling if it's shaking. And then that curiosity will then just lead them into the next step. So a lot of these things, or milestones, people see, it's like comparing an example like an iceberg in the ocean. You see the little tip on top, but you don't actually see the massive iceberg that's lying underneath that ocean. So when I win a race, it's not just that race on its own. It's a whole long list of preparation that went in there, and the race is just the result of all of that. Obviously, given conditions that nobody crashed into you, or some curveball like that, or the engine popped or something like that. That can happen as well. So it's things like that. So what have you got in your environment? Where are you currently at? And what can you maximize out of that? Because it'll push you into the next position, where you then need to just learn and deal with that. And then obviously, if you have coaches like myself, there's a lot of coaches out there that can then guide you, that then just enhances all of that and speeds up the process.
It's an ever-changing time that we see it, and I think it's across all disciplines of sports. We've just seen the Olympics wrap up, and so much success in the women's lanes. A lot of challenges just coming through the cracks, but it's coming out. And I think that's what's important. But I think it's what's more, even more important is how athletes and sports people sort of persevere through that. And I think you're a living embodiment of the perseverance one should be or should have in the world of sports, because man, it's tough. It's tough on the body, and it's tough on one's mentality and emotions. And just big ups to you and congratulations to the massive work that you're doing in the world of motorsport. What's in the ranks for you? What can we look forward to in the upcoming seasons?
So obviously we're preparing for the big 9 hour race that's going to be at Kailami end of November. So that's, I suppose, the biggest race of the year, if you want to call it that, in South African racing. I was hoping to go to the Nürburgring this year. I want to go get my B license to be able to compete there. Eventually, the end goal is to do a 24-hour race there. But with given the I call it chiseling the diamond that I'm busy with, it's premature to go there. So there's a lot of other things that I'm working on. Again, comparing to the iceberg and under that water. And of course, if it comes together, there's going to be lots of exciting stuff for next year. But obviously, before you pull your sort of what the rabbit out the bag, you have to first get it confirmed and all together before you can celebrate. And this is what you want to do. And then we're doing a ladies' afternoon in karting in September, where we're busy inviting a whole bunch of women in leadership to have an afternoon fun in karting, but basically just to demonstrate my world. And it's something that they wouldn't do out of their own. And of course, making it women only, I've eliminated the intimidation factor. And I'm sure from that, a lot of them will be open to getting maybe more involved in motorsport, finding a bit more out of how it works and so on. That'll be great to see. And then also we will working on a nice project with some girls, getting them into an endurance go-kart team. That will be great if we can get that for next year. But obviously that is sponsorship dependent. But I'll be then obviously coaching those girls and giving them that opportunity as best I can.
If anyone wants to get into contact, because my mind is racing, you're so busy and there's a lot going on. But how do we? If I want to get into racing, if I just love what I hear and just want to see a little bit more, where do I find out about all these things?
So the best place would be the website. I've got a new website that was launched now in August. So it's fabiennelanz.co.za, and there are contact forms and that on the bottom of that page. So that's where you can pop me a mail. And then we've got a QR code that's floating around. It's not an online thing, so that we use at events so people can sign up there. And basically, we just want your name, your email. And if you had to have a job in a Formula One racing team, what would it be? Obviously, next to being the racing driver, because we all want to be the racing driver. But what else would you want to do? Because like me, I've developed a lot of other skills. I love art. I love nature. So there's a lot of other things that I actually do besides driving the racing car. So what would that job be? So we use a lot of that just to collect the database as well. But yes, reach out. I'm on Instagram as well. Just don't be afraid. Even if you think it's the most hideous question, just send it, and we'll obviously answer it as best we can. And then again, like there's opportunities that come all the time. And then if I know this is what you're looking for, I can then direct you to the right place where to go to. Like sim racing is also a big thing.
Yeah.
We've done some competitions last year where we joined it with Rock the Rig, that had a thing going for lady races with Red Bull. And we did a whole thing like that as well. But we need to know that you are there and you're interested in that specific department, because to just cast out a net and just see, okay, who are we going to get? That is really difficult to do. And then, of course, we do competitions where we invite people to come to enter, and then obviously get them to come and watch us racing. Kailami is a very popular place for that. So we did one for Women's Month, and then we will be doing a giveaway tickets for people to come and watch the racing in end of November.
A lot happening in Fabienne's world. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Just to chat about what you do and what you love, and just spreading the word. Obviously, throwing the spanner in the works and crashing through barriers in the world of motorsport and in the world of sport. Fabienne Lanz, who is a race car driver, rushing through traffic in a Cobra. If you see a Cobra, it's probably you. But congratulations on the brilliant things that you're doing. And may you continuously move forward along with all the things that you continuously do. Fabienne Lanz 96 is her Instagram handle. Follow her there to follow the story and follow what she's doing and what she's winning, which podium she's on next. You next in Kailami in November, if I'm not mistaken. Keep an eye out for that as well. You head to Spain next month as an ambassador, carrying the women's baton in motorsport. Thank you so much once again for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
If you enjoyed tonight's video, you can rewatch it at Sandman Sports on YouTube. We are across all platforms at Sandman Sports as well. There's other interviews that we had. We had a chat with Olympian Sizwe Ndlovu earlier this week as well. So have a look out for that one. We spoke to Boy Dumelo, who is also an MC at the Varsity Cup. There, have a look at for that chat as well. We'll meet up with you next week, Fabienne. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
and that's a wrap. Have a great one, and we'll see you next week.